Okay, so here today we have our Manchester City correspondent Sam Lee and our Barcelona writer Pol Ballus as well. So big exclusive today. The Athletic have revealed that Manchester City have now reached an agreement with Barcelona for Gündoğan to return a year after leaving. Pol, big news. Just break this down. How did this all come about? Who got in touch with who? Was it a Gündoğan camp? Was it Manchester City inquiring? Or was it a Barcelona capitulation?
I mean, it's a story that has been brewing up for weeks in Barcelona. The main thing that ignited this was Gundogan feeling as a sort of guilty or as a sort of problem in Barcelona. There was those briefings and those whispers around the club that Gundogan's salary was too hard to take for Barcelona at this stage, basically because they have not been able to sell Ronald Araujo. They have not been able to make any big sales. And they have Dani Olmo still to register, and the only way basically to register Dani Olmo before of the weekend is to offload wages. And out of the players that they had, the club believed that Gündoğan was one that eventually could want a way out of the club. And that's where things started. These sort of whispers that I'm mentioning started since Gündoğan joined the team in pre-season, so it's not a new thing. But the City thing basically started last week when Gündoğan realized that he could start looking for life out of Barcelona, and Gündoğan only wanted life at City if it had to be out of Barcelona. He has received approaches from Turkey, from Qatar, from Saudi Arabia, and as soon as he knew that the City door could be opened, so basically he accepted that a life out of Barcelona could eventually happen and that he was happy to take a new challenge. It was Gündoğan who got in touch with Man City to know how was the possibility. Man City opened him the door, and then negotiations between Man City and Gündoğan's camp were fairly quick and fairly easy to do because all sides wanted to go to the same destination, basically. And Barcelona agreed to let him go on a free, basically, because Barcelona here are happy to see Gündoğan waiving off 2 years of contract. Gundogan, when he signed for Barcelona, he signed a 2-year deal plus an extra season that was optional. This optional season was already triggered because he played over 60% of the games last season. So basically, if he played over 60% of the games in either of the first 2 seasons, this third year was activated, was just triggered. And that's what happened last season. So it's now a case of Gundogan writing off these 2 years of contract in order to join City and to fulfill his wish to be in the place where he wanted to be if he had to leave Barcelona.
Yeah, I mean, what does that City contract look like? We're hearing a year with a potential optional year. So, I mean, I'm just doing the math here. Sounds like he might not be out of pocket, basically, going back to Manchester City.
No, he won't be out of pocket. I mean, I guess that he's not going to be in bad terms, but I'm sure that...
He was on loads at Barca though, wasn't he?
Yeah. He was on loads of Barca.
He won't be getting that much at City.
No.
Scandalous.
That's what I was about to say. He won't be near those numbers at City. Basically, because at Barcelona as well, he joined on a free transfer, so he was sort of entitled to have a bigger salary. But yeah, at City he won't be getting that money. At Barcelona, the salary was 9 million net per year. So yeah, he's not gonna get near those figures at City.
Okay, well, Sam, let's get that sort of City perspective from your perspective. He's 34 in October, and City before he left were wary of offering him a 2-year contract. But as you've written, in your comment piece in the Athletic, you feel that his return is an absolute no-brainer. To be honest, I don't think there'll be many teams that would say no to Ilkay Gündoğan at all.
Yeah, the landscape's changed a little since last year. I think effectively as well, he kind of comes in, well, I guess we'll see, but I think the idea is he'll come in with a more of a reduced role now than he probably would have had he just stayed all along. Because had he stayed all along, it would have been Ilkay Gündoğan. He's been here the whole time. This is the guy you've got to dislodge, and the squad is kind of built around him. But obviously the squad was built to some extent in his absence. So now there's Kovacic as well, obviously Rodri. The reason they were looking for an extra player in midfield was more for a holding midfielder to support Rodri. Now, let's say Foden's playing on the right wing, Bernardo's suspended, De Bruyne is injured. you're not going to not play Gündoğan as an attacking midfielder. But I feel like the kind of profile they were looking for with the holding midfielder and with a striker is to kind of be the 17th, 18th members of the squad, not to come in and move everyone else around them. So I feel like he's going to come in and maybe not be the huge central figure that he was before, but in terms of his year away, I think, well, Pol was telling me the other day he was Barca's best player last year. He played more minutes. That's a fact. He played more minutes than anybody at Barca last year. We saw him at the Euros. I still thought he looked great. So he's still got that quality. There's obviously the potential that he could come in and play a lot more. But yeah, the dynamic has shifted slightly. But in terms of being a no-brainer, yeah, City were looking for a depth option. And look, just as an example, up front, they're one of the options they've got, I think they've got two options. One of the options they're considering is Kyogo from Celtic, 29-year-old striker. He, some people, some City fans are like, oh, signing a guy from Celtic, what are we doing? Like, I think on paper his game play kind of works, but what they don't want from a new signing is to come in and expect to play all the time and like think, well, Erling Haaland's here, but I don't care. I want to play, and if I'm not playing in 6 months, I'm going to get my agent to call the club. So this is what they wanted from a signing. So with that in mind, to get somebody of Gundogan's undisputed level is a no-brainer. But the concession might have to be, like he's kind of made on wages, is maybe not to expect too much playing time. The only other knock-on then is players like James McAtee. Like I say, it's not like Gundogan's going to be playing every game in that kind of hole behind Haaland. But you wouldn't overlook him either. And in that scenario, when I mentioned earlier on, who would you play? I don't think you'd play McAtee or Nico O'Reilly, for example, instead of Gündoğan when you've got him. So there's some little wrinkles to it, but overall, I just think it's obvious. He's still a great player. He wanted to come back, get it done.
And also, you haven't. Oh, Paul, do you want to go?
Oh no! I just wanted to add that. Yeah, no, I also think that Gündoğan ticks too many boxes for City just to not go after him. I know that when City were sort of considering if they had to sign or not before the end of the transfer window, if you look at the assembling of City's squad, these central channels, this attacking midfield position, this Rodri replacement position, those are roles that have been considered at City. And when they have the idea of which player should we bring in, this exact position, a backup for Rodri and a new number 10, has been in discussion. So basically, in Gundogan you get for free a player who can do both, who knows all the patterns that Pep wants.
Exactly.
Who basically will fit straight into the dressing room with this, and that he wants to be here and he will accept the role because he basically made the call to be here. So it's a massive win-win for City to get a player on a free who completes everything or a big part of what they were looking for ahead of this end of the transfer window.
Yeah, I was thinking about that as well. You don't have to reteach him the Pep way. He's already in his DNA. He knows exactly what's going on. From a Barcelona perspective, though, Paul, you think it's a bit tricky to let someone like Gündoğan go, a player with so much experience. Lewandowski is probably the other senior player in that team. Contributed 5 goals and 9 assists in 36 appearances last season. I even remember that time where Barcelona, I can't remember whether it was a European match, but he really wanted the team to rally round. He was almost talking to the team saying, we need a bit more fight in us. Is this a Hansi Flick conversation, or is it a much broader conversation? Is it just as simple as saying we need to register Dani Olmo, so we need to get rid of this player?
It's when you speak to Barcelona, it's so complex, but it is mainly down to finances. Barcelona are watching at which contract they can get rid of, and they saw Gundogan as the most convincible guy, just to allow him to let him go. As from a sporting perspective, I think it's bad news for Barcelona to see Gundogan go, because Gundogan is and was the best player in so many departments for Barcelona. At the same time, given the signings that they've made with Dani Olmo, the figure of Pedri, and the emergence of Fermín López, it's not the most dramatic loss because they have players to play in that sort of role. But I think it's a bad message, the one that Barcelona are sending, in terms of how they manage the institution. How are they going to convince new players to join in? Basically, the message that you're sending is that you convinced Gündoğan last season just promising something that Barcelona couldn't afford or were a bit reckless to afford. And like when you go deeper and try to see the big picture and like how they try to sign Nico Williams or all this PR in terms of like, we want to sign Nico Williams, I can see why Nico Williams is having doubts. If you see that Barcelona have to let Gundogan go, that Dani Olmo is not registered, and Dani Olmo's people are not happy about it, then Gundogan had this honest conversation with Hansi Flick, in which Hansi Flick, he said that, he couldn't guarantee that Gundogan could be like a fundamental part of the team. I think that deep down Gundogan knew that he would have ended playing at Barcelona because he have the quality. But as soon as the City door was open, he saw like a happier life outside Barcelona for the first time. I think that for Barca, given the fact that from the sporting perspective is bad, I think that the worst outcome that they take is as a club, the message that you leave to the industry and how other players will see the club operators now.
Yeah, Sam, for City and for Gündoğan, I wonder what success will mean for him in this time around. He's probably not going to get the same kind of minutes as to when he left. And when he left, City won the treble. That was an incredible season, right? Leaving on a high. What does it look like for a player like him now to come into a team where he might not necessarily start? And what does success look like? Is it just now a joint success, right? I'm in the twilight, I'm in the back end of my career. Let's just enjoy our football. No pressure.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think he might be enjoying life. He went to Barcelona because it wasn't like he was desperate to get out of City, but all things considered, he had the option to move to Barcelona, live there, in theory, for a few years, better weather, great club, in theory, and all that stuff. It didn't really pan out that way. And, he like Paul said, he's had offers, presumably big offers as well, if we're talking Saudi Arabia, to go there, earn loads of money, but he just kind of wants to come back to City. He's not, like Paul said, he's not going to be struggling at City, but he's not going to be on the same money. He's forfeited these last 2 years of his contract at Barca. He just wants to go back, be at City, work with Guardiola, and that I'd enjoy football. Do you know what I mean? That's it. So if success at City is obvious, isn't it? It's trophies, but if he goes back there and enjoys the last couple of years of his career, I don't know, starts a route into coaching. He already did some coaching with the youth teams at City a couple of years ago when he was still there. If they help him along those lines as well to set him up for his life after like playing, then that's it. And obviously, there's a high chance it'll win trophies along the way. But if he doesn't, he's obviously just made a decision that's best for him and where he's going to be happiest. Not necessarily most successful or playing the most, but happiest.
Okay.
But probably those two as well.
Okay, let's move on. You're listening to the Athletic FC podcast. Drop us an email if there's something you want us to know more about or think we should be discussing. The email address is tafcpod@theathletic.com. That's tafcpod@theathletic.com. All right, Paul, let's go back to Barcelona. We did a podcast very recently asking how on earth Barcelona could afford Dani Gündoğan, now off their books. Do we expect any more departures? I mean, this is Barcelona. Anything can happen.
Yeah. More departures are going to happen. It's just that Gundogan was the only one that could happen this week, or that was expected to happen this week, and that's why this was done like with not a rush, but like with so quickly. But they the club expect Clément Lenglet to leave at some point. Vitor Roque will leave at some point, and Mika Faye is going to leave at some point. With the Clément Lenglet deal, I basically think that Barcelona, with the deal that he has, he's earning over 16 million per year due to like deferrals from COVID and like the former board signing a contract that was like terrible for the club. But this is a deal that basically forces Barcelona to wait until the end of the transfer window and to see which team is desperate to add like a new centre back and send Clément Lenglet in there. So that's what they're gonna do. Then with Vitor Roque, they have the two possibilities of Sporting de Portugal and Real Betis from here from La Liga. Real Betis wants a loan and Sporting de Portugal wants to buy him. The only way for Barcelona to make salary room in Vitor Roque is to sell him, because if they loan him back, as he's still not registered in La Liga's books, La Liga won't make any discount or won't make any sort of like arrangement. So if you sell him, you get more income in the budget, so that produces a bit of like room in the salary cap. And then with Mika Faye, they are exploring the best option. They want to sell him. He is a young guy who had a really good season at the second team last season. He has the potential to play like in a big league. But given the amount of defenders that the club has, he doesn't really have a space in there. There are teams from the Ligue 1, from the French league, that are interested in Mika Faye. And now it's a case of Barcelona waiting and trying to see which is the best option. So those are the three players that are more waiting to be sold. Then there's the case of Ansu Fati, but Ansu Fati is going to be a really tough one, and I don't dismiss the option that he stays at Barcelona because he is injured, and I can hardly see anyone taking his wages as well. So I don't dismiss the fact that he stays, at least up until January. And that should be a bit it. Those are the big names that are like Barcelona considering now to ease off the pressure in their numbers. The club, they are briefing that they don't dismiss a new signing before the end of the transfer window, but we know that we have to be cautious with these sort of briefings. Let's see how they end up. But yeah, if they have to reinforce any position, the club says that a left winger and potentially a holding midfield are their targets. I can get my head around the fact that the only holding midfielder that Barcelona has right now in the squad is a 17-year-old called Marc Bernal, who is amazing and looks amazing, but he's the only guy in there. But yeah, let's see how Barcelona sorts that out, basically.
Yeah, and he's only 17.
Yeah.
I mean, not so much experience. Anyway, sticking with the topic of Barcelona's finances, I know you've been talking to a few of our Athletic readers in a recent Q&A, and Emil J asks, when do you expect the club will return to Camp Nou and get back to the matchday income they actually need? Because that is so powerful,
Yeah, that's a big one. When you speak to the club, they tell you that they expect to be back in late December or the latest in January to go back to the Camp Nou in a reduced capacity. Actually, the club has informed UEFA and La Liga that they plan to play in two stadiums this season. The first half of the season in Montjuic, in the Olympic Stadium where they are right now, and the second half in the Camp Nou. 60,000 fans, I was told, that were expected to be in the Camp Nou when they reopen, so it's not going to be full capacity. But yeah, let's see what happens, because you never know. The remodelations are still a work in process. And even if when they came back to the normal income generated from the Camp Nou, the income is going to be like destined, like a part of it, to pay basically the loans that they got for the remodelations and everything. So it's going to be a case of like, yeah, we are back to the new stadium, but there's going to be still like a lot of things to pay. But yeah, the sooner they get to the Camp Nou, I'm sure that the club is going to really feel it and really improve from that.
Yeah, I'm just looking at the Barca squad right now, and I think 16 players for Hansi Flick right now. For that first game of the season in particular, 2-1 win against Valencia, 8 have played in La Masia. And we talk about the strength in depth of that youth system that Barcelona, one of the positives actually, still churn out continuously. With no big expensive signings coming in, how important is it that they do rely on La Masia? I know we talk about the defensive midfielder who's 17, but it's still something to fall back on, surely.
It's just fundamental. It's fundamental. It's the most appealing thing, I would say, or the most encouraging thing that Barcelona fans ahead of the new season, just like seeing young kids doing it well, delivering everything they have just for the badge, and just proving that the way just to forgive all the bad or the wrongful business decisions that Barcelona have taken in the last years, at least they have the pride of the kids and the pride of La Masia. It is going to be fundamental just to not, as I was saying, just to not make the fans detach from the club. So it's a way just to bring the people closer to the club and just to develop this sort of belonging between fans and the institution. Hansi Flick has mentioned throughout the preseason and after the first game of La Liga how impressed he's been just to have these players out of the blue. He basically didn't know anyone when he joined the club. He had seen some videos of the second team players and he knew how they played, but he hadn't seen him, and just when he saw them in training, he was like impressed and shocked, like, wow, those guys are good. Any Barca fan, when they see there's a team playing, they basically think, why didn't we do that earlier? Just like throw the kids, just assume that it's going to be tough years, but like sell the sort of brand like Barcelona did with UNICEF in the front of the T-shirt years ago, like selling this Mescun Club brand, which was absolutely true, by the way, with this innovative deal. So you can do sort of a similar thing with the La Masia kids, saying, look, I'm not going to become Athletic Bilbao, but I'm going to become a club that is going to compensate for all the bad activities or the bad the decisions that we made in the past by like really trusting the young kids and making some signings here and there just to help them out to grow. But yeah, now with all the summer of leverage and everything, it feels like a bit of a lost chance because Barcelona already have like sold part of the club and mortgage their future to get big signings. None of them have been a real success in the club. But yeah, given all these struggles, it's going to be time just to keep trusting in La Masia and see what it brings, basically, what it brings the club.
All right, mate. I think I'll let you go now. We've rinsed you for Barcelona info, and I know you've got such a busy period right now. So thanks so much for joining us, Paul.
It's been a pleasure. See you guys.
Yeah, Sam, let's return back to Manchester City. You mentioned earlier, and you reported this morning actually, that Manchester City are weighing up a move for 29-year-old Celtic forward Kyogo Furuhashi. While one other also forward is on their radar as well. Can you explain just how City have gone by trying to find an Alvarez replacement? Because we spoke about Ivan Toney yesterday, and it's clear that that kind of striker and that profile of striker isn't what they're after.
Yeah, it's all about squad balance, really. Guardiola and Chiki Begiristain, the sporting director, they believe that they've got, the 14, 15 top-class players that they need. And even though Alvarez left, they've got cover in the kind of number 10, number 8 position that he played a lot of last season because they got Foden, Bernardo Silva, obviously Gundogan now, De Bruyne. They've got new options on the right wing in Oscar Bob, who is injured, and Savinho as well. So they didn't want to add people there. And then obviously with Haaland, it's Haaland. Everyone knows he's going to play every game. Like there's no... when Guardiola had Aguero, there was like, okay, well, tactically we might need somebody to drop off a bit more or press a bit more, so we won't play him in this game. But with Haaland, it's just, no, we got Haaland, we'll make everything else work around it. So to bring in a striker like, for example, Ivan Toney, who, with the best will in the world, if he'd wanted to come and say, oh no, it's okay, I know I'm going to be second fiddle, like in reality... Like, is any top striker who could score 20 Premier League goals going to be happy with coming off the bench, playing against Red Star Belgrade in the Champions League? Not really. So they've got to find people who are happy to do that, but also be really good and good enough to play for City, but also be cheap. It's not easy.
It's a tricky one, isn't it? Yeah,
it is. But I mean, there is a bit of wiggle room. So Kyogo is 29. I don't know much about the other option, but apparently he's like younger, more like early 20s. So it's not necessarily they have to be older or they have to be younger. You just have to be going into it with your eyes open. You're not going to play much. You need to have a bit of an element of the old cliche thing of when my agent phoned me to tell me City were interested, I thought he was joking. You need it to be that kind of thing, like you need to be having like when the sweet spot is Akanji, because Akanji, Dortmund wanted to get rid of him 2 years ago. They never really had any options, and then City came and signed him, and he's been amazing. But it's that kind of thing. Like there's either no interest or there's no interest from other clubs, I should say, or the interest is from teams nowhere near City's level. But they go, right, you can come. And you go, oh, I can't believe it. I'm doing it. And if I don't play that much, it's fine. They just had 2 years out of Sergio Gomez doing that. They signed him. He barely played for a couple of years. And he left in the summer for Real Sociedad, I think it was. And that's the example. You've got the main guys, the 14, 15 household names. And then you've got some youngsters who are obviously like Rico Lewis, Oscar Bob, really good. And then you've got like the likes of Sergio Gomez, for example, Maximo Perroni, who was part of the squad for the second half of the treble-winning year, was out on loan last year. It's probably going on loan now. Those guys, they won't play much, but they're there. They're quality. Or, maybe not top City level quality, but they're not going to let them down in the kind of games, if it's Carabao Cup, if it's a Champions League home game that's not too important, that kind of thing. So Kyogo is probably a bit above that Sergio Gomez level of never playing, but he's obviously not Alvarez level, where Haaland's not fit, De Bruyne's not fit. He can play every game, but he's going to bring something. So yeah, it's fairly tight confines that they're looking for. But they seem to have found somebody. The thing with Kyogo is, and this was jumped upon straight away once I tweeted it by City fans who were concerned. He's got a shoulder problem. He didn't play at the weekend, supposedly because of that shoulder problem. And Brendan Rodgers, the Celtic manager, talked about him potentially needed surgery on that, which will keep him out for 4 months. It actually sounds very similar to the shoulder problem I've got, which is the shoulder dislocates fairly easily, but it goes back in, and then so apparently how he's been managing it is he kind of runs off down the tunnel, it goes back in, and he comes out and plays again, which is incredible. Because when it happens with me, I'm not playing again. Like I'll be all right in like a couple of weeks. It happened during the Euros. I was playing golf on the Monday. It was all right, but like. He just manages it that way. And when I had the surgery, it's like 3 months recovery or 3 months till you're fully fit. But then the reason he hasn't had it in the past, I would imagine, is because I had mine, and then I played football last September, just did a routine challenge with somebody, and it knocked my shoulder out again after having the surgery. So if he's playing football every day, like proper high stakes football, training, matches, obviously, what's the point in having that surgery to keep you out? And then it's probably going to happen again. So yeah, there's that, and there's like his level of English is like okay. I think City would like it to be better. So again, they might have to make some concessions on who they want. Just going back to your question, but yeah, it's not easy to find, but they've just about found at least one target, possibly two.
Yeah, I was just thinking about Furuhashi, and just before we started the pod, we were looking at there was actually a City group link, right? He would have played under the current assistant coach at Manchester City when he was in Japan, because I know Ange Postecoglou brought him to Celtic, but Postecoglou obviously knew of him in Japan because he used to play for Vissel Kobe.
Yeah, and Postecoglou was the Yokohama manager, and that's a CFG club. And I spoke to Brian Marwood at City a few years ago, and he was raving about Postecoglou. You know, just in terms of the coaching talent they've got in the group. And not just the obvious concentration of talent in Manchester, but around the world. And he mentioned Postecoglou then. So then there is that kind of link of Postecoglou being a one-time CFG coach, taking some Japanese players, including Kyogo, to Celtic. And obviously that was very successful. And yeah, he would have worked with Juan Malia while he was at Vissel Kobe. And, you know, Guardiola, he always talks about this kind of thing, and it's obvious in football, but he says if we want to sign somebody who's Dutch, you know, they'll call Ronald Koeman, who's got a great relationship with, or what do you know about this guy? If you want to call somebody who's French, or Patrick Vieira, do you know what I mean? It's that kind of thing. But with this, it's like, well, your assistant, who, you know, Guardiola believes is better than he is, he's like, well, what did you think about playing with him? So even there are these little doubts, the shoulder injury, the level of English, this kind of thing, but like it's not going to be a perfect signing. But in terms of the attributes and the feedback they've got, they're obviously confident enough to go say, okay, we'll have a look at this. But that is expected to be pushing ahead today, Wednesday, Thursday, because on Monday, Tuesday, they were trying to get Gundogan done. But as we know from Pol earlier, that is done now. So they can cast their eye back to the strikers a bit next 48 hours.
You spoke about City not looking to spend big money on a striker, but also City have been really quiet compared to a lot of people in the transfer market, it seems. But they've sold Alvarez for what, 80 odd million pounds. What are they looking to do with that money? Do you have any insight on how they're looking to reinvest that money? Because it's a big sum.
No, you'd imagine in terms of like the hope for the City squad, and look, you're going to have fans of other teams listening to this hoping that they never reinvest that money. And to be fair, you probably got fans hoping that they get relegated anyway because of the charges and stuff. But in terms of City squad building, short term, adding Gündoğan and adding whoever the striker might be, if they get one, it makes sense this year, because it's like, well, you don't need another number 10. You don't need a top level player to kind of compete with Haaland. So somebody like Kyogo, somebody like Gündoğan at 33, 34 years of age, it's fine for now. So short term, I think it makes sense. Long term, you know, you lost Gündoğan in the first place. You brought in Kovacic, who's, I think, brilliant, but he's not as good as Gündoğan was. But then you got Gündoğan back, who's himself going to be, you know, retiring soon. De Bruyne might be in his last season. So you'd like to think that at some point that money is going to be like, okay, yeah, we are going to get Jamal Musiala, for example, a world-class name, or somebody like, you know, Bernardo Silva when he signed. He wasn't like Jamal Musiala in terms of worldwide reputation, but he was obviously a brilliant player. They will need, you would think, to reinvest that money in those kind of players next summer. Otherwise, you're just going to have a situation where you look at the squad and it makes sense now, but in the future you go, well, that guy's not as good as he was. That guy's not as good as he was. Gundogan's now 35. De Bruyne's gone. So they are going to need to reinvest that at some point. But it doesn't seem like, well, it's not going to be now.
Okay, fantastic. Well, let's leave it there. Sam, thanks so much for your time. And Paul, I know he had to leave us earlier, but really appreciate him joining us as well. We'll be back tomorrow, delving into the biggest football story of the day. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to watch more episodes of the show, please subscribe to the channel. We'll be joined by the likes of David Ornstein, Matt Slater, Adam Crafton, Carl Anker, and plenty more through the season. If you'd like to listen to the episodes in full in audio form, search The Athletic FC wherever you get your podcasts from.